Let's get to story number 6 now. Eaton Fire Survivors are upset with State Farm. They say the insurance company is delaying and denying their claims. KCAL News reporter Rick Montanez is live in Pasadena with what they're demanding.
Amy, good morning. You know, they gathered here. They call themselves the Eaton Fire Survivors Network, and they say State Farm needs to do more for these policyholders. You see, they are still there having their news conference talking about these claims that are not being processed for them or paid out, which has left a lot of them, they say, in financial ruin nearly. State Farm is the largest insurance provider for property insurance in California, and it is in the middle of requesting a sizable rate increase. But these fire survivors, they gathered here outside of the State Farm response tent here in Pasadena, declaring that many of them are facing, again, as I said, financial struggles as they wait for policy coverage and claim approvals. Many of them are facing repairs to damaged homes or complete rebuilds. Last week, you'll remember, State Farm went to there were hearings where they requested a 17% rate increase, saying it will have to pay out roughly $7.6 billion to fire survivors. Prior to the fires, the insurance company was requesting a 30% increase, but has reduced its ask. State Farm says it is in a financial emergency, and that's exactly where these fire survivors say they are too.
$11,000 to clean the contents of a 5-bedroom home that's contaminated with asbestos, a hazardous material. Are we supposed to scrub the asbestos out by ourselves?
So we've now spent $119,000 to cover housing, replace essentials, and test our home for safety. Much of it is on credit cards. State Farm has only reimbursed us $54,000 to date. Some of these expenses were approved weeks ago, and many have yet to be paid. These aren't just unacceptable delays, but they are destabilizing financially.
So that ruling has not come yet for that rate increase request by State Farm. We, by the way, have reached out to State Farm to get a comment about what these claims are made by these State Farm policyholders. We have not heard back yet, but a lot of the people as part of this Eaton Fire Survivors Network say they're even more frustrated by the fact that they still have to pay on their policies while they wait for their claims to go through. Reporting live in Pasadena, Rick Montanez, KCAL News.
All right, Rick, thank you. Well, today marks 100 days since the Palisades and Eaton wildfires, and this morning, LA Mayor Karen Bass celebrated the completion of debris removal at the Palisades Branch Library. Bass has taken emergency executive action to speed up the recovery process, and nearly a dozen rebuilding permits have now been approved by the city. Today, she congratulated the Army Corps of Engineers for the work that they've done so far.
What they have done here in record speed, every time I come, I see more and more properties cleared, and now we are over 600 properties cleared.
Well, Mayor Bass gave certificates of appreciation to the heads of the Army Corps of Engineers. Oh, a cruel twist is keeping fire victims stuck in limbo. First, they lost their home in the Palisades fire, then their identities were stolen. KCAL News reporter Tina Patel shows us why they can't even begin the rebuilding process.
Even though 3 months have passed, there are some fire victims who say that no progress has been made, because how can they prove who they are when all of their belongings burned up?
This was my office here.
Hank and Diane Elder have been back to their Palisades home 6 or 7 times since the fire. Each time, it's emotional.
The first time I was doubled over in tears. That doesn't happen to me anymore. But yet I find that I get a slight feeling of nausea. And when I get home, I'm completely exhausted.
They say seeing the debris is a reminder of all they lost. That's why they're anxious to have their property cleared by the Army Corps of Engineers. But they don't know when that will happen, because right after the fire, someone stole their identities and applied for FEMA benefits using their names.
We had to jump through a million hoops to prove that we're the actual owners. And then we had to prove that we were the occupants. So it's like a 2-step thing. You have to prove that you own it, and then you have to prove that you actually lived here. But of course, all your documents burned up in the fire.
Last month, the Department of Justice arrested and charged 3 people for filing fraudulent claims for disaster benefits. But the elders don't know if those were the people who stole their identities, and they don't know how many other fire victims are in the same situation.
And they said, oh, we can't release that information. We asked FEMA, and they won't tell us anything.
The elders are sharing their story because they want to put pressure on the agencies that are supposed to be helping survivors of the fire, hoping that this doesn't happen again.
There's a lot of glitches, and I understand that, you know, they're dealing with things on a massive scale here. These are thousands of people, so there are going to be glitches. I understand that. But it's nevertheless, it's very hard because we kind of feel like we're being victimized again and again.
The elders worry that because their recovery process is just beginning, they're 3 months behind all their neighbors. But they're trying to push forward so they can eventually return home.
Yes, this is home. It's where our children were raised.
In Pacific Palisades, Tina Patel, KCAL News.
And KCAL News is committed to being there every step of the way in the rebuilding process. If you have a question, a news tip, share it with us by scanning that QR code right there on the screen or send us a message on kcalnews.com/tips. All right, story number 8 now. Hundreds of pets were reunited with their owners after the LA fires thanks to the use of microchips. But